This episode of Ticket Volume is brought to you by us, InvGate. Get service operations under control in no time. Get 1 free month of our software solution by going to try.invigate.com. Ticket Volume is honored to host a guest with a wealth of service management experience. Today's guest was a practice and service manager at Proactive Services and National Australia Bank before starting Macanta Consulting, and most recently with KarenFerris.com as an independent organizational change management and leadership guide. Welcome to Ticket Volume, news and information for improving IT experiences. I'm your host, Matt Barron, and I get to chat with different leaders each week to share insights on service management, technology, and business, and this episode is exactly that. I hope you're having a great day and a great week, and I also hope that you'll leave a comment, connect with us, share our podcast, or volunteer to be on as a guest. Whatever it is, I want you to get involved and get us improving. Now, let's begin. Welcome to Ticket Volume, Karen Ferris.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
Yes, thanks for taking some time to be on. I know that it's been years since we have really caught up or been able to work together, and a large part of that is because of your major shift from Macanta to Karen Ferris, which that's the first time I've had a spoiler in the intro. And so talk about that a little bit, because you used to be heavy into service management. We saw you in the IT space all the time, and now you're really focused on OCM. What was that like?
What happened? Well, back in around 2010, I stumbled across a framework that was put together by PhD students at Simon Fraser University. And when I looked at this framework, they'd asked the question, how do you embed sustainability into an organization? And I looked at it and went, this isn't about sustainability. This is about any change. And I thought this would be great for service management people because they love frameworks, don't we? We love frameworks. And it would help them use OCM in service management. And I reached out to the Network of Business Sustainability in Canada, and they put me in touch with the professor. And they said, yeah, go ahead. Because I said, can I do a presentation or a white paper? And they said, yeah, go ahead. And I started writing, well, you know this story. I started writing the white paper. And I suddenly realized I had a book on my hands because it was just so much information in there. So the book, Balanced Diversity, my first book, accidental author, never intended to write it, got published. And it was welcomed by the service management community because they never really had anything. I mean, the ITIL books had talked about OCM in the book Implementing Service Management, but no one never seemed to read that book. So that's when because the book was about organizational change, I realized how passionate I was about OCM and that I'd already been doing it as a people leader, which I'd been for most of my career in IT, helping people transition through change, just never called it that.
Yeah.
And so people started tapping me on the shoulder for OCM due to the book. So that's when at Macanta, we decided we keep Macanta as the business, which is still going. We still do service management work. But then set up KarenFerris.com as a practice for OCM. So, and it's really, the two are really, like I say, I still do service management, and it's great to have OCM in your pocket when you're doing that as well.
Yeah. Exactly. Every good initiative, every large initiative, even the small initiatives, if you're changing the way that someone does their job from point A to point B, having a way to do that smoothly and effectively, what a great tool to have.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of service management, you're probably changing processes, changing technology, changing structures, changing roles, and as you said, Matt, changing the way people do their jobs. It's all touching people. So you've got to help people through that change. And the challenge we have today is that the rate of change is just getting faster and faster. And there's a futurist, and I can't remember his name, he reckons that the rate of change is doubling every 10 years. So if you're 10 years old now, in 2070, actually, if I get this right, in 2070, you will experience a year of change in 11 days.
Wow.
I know, that blew me away when I read that a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Those of us who are going through the AI change right now, like, can you imagine that happening in just a week or two?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess that's the reality we're headed towards.
Yeah. So,
and I remember the book Balanced Diversity. I remember it being mind blowing at the time because I was just breaking into OCM, and what a coincidence! And I always kind of got mixed up, like, as a new consultant, as a rookie consultant, I was kind of blurred the lines between training and OCM. How do you like differentiate those two things?
So training is an integral part of OCM. If people have got to do something different in a different way or use a different technology, then they will need training to enable them to do that. So part of OCM's role is to ensure that that happens. Sometimes there's a training arm in an organization you can leverage. Sometimes OCM ends up doing it themselves. But a lot of OCM people aren't learning and development specialists. So if you have that expertise on hand, that's great. But you need to make sure that that takes place. And OCM's responsibility is making sure it happens to the right people at the right time and in the right way. Because it's no good having training 6 months before an implementation and people have forgotten what the hell. And you don't want it right up, against the go live date because people are just panicking, they're distracted. The training isn't going in whichever way. And we have to remember as well, OCM also will do a training needs analysis to decide who needs what, but also how they need training delivered to them, because it's not a one size fits all. Everybody does, likes training differently. Some people like the classroom experience. Some people want to be self-paced. Some people want to have it online. Some people prefer on-the-job training or a blend of all of those things. But we need to, and the challenge of training, as you know, it's the thing that, as the project gets squeezed and the deadline's approaching, it's the training that pops out, doesn't it? It gets squeezed out like a toothpaste, And and we know what the implications of that are. So we have to make sure that it happens, because there's nothing worse than you've got somebody, in a job they know they're going to have to change the way they do it, but they've no idea what's changing, what the role is going to be. I mean, that's scary, and that's when people resist change, because it's the concern and anxiety about the change. And if you can alleviate that, then people will go, yeah, okay, I get it. You've trained me. I'm ready. Bring it on.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much there. Of course, training is the first thing that gets cut. Like, the closer you get to go live, the less time training has. And I just remember, because we were always doing large application development initiatives. So we were always behind the ball on our app dev stuff. I'm going to totally admit that my code is not great. And so, of course, like, you hit those deadlines and then you keep going because you're an app dev, and you can't do anything until then. But then the trainers need this buffer where you develop this application, you've developed this experience, whatever it is, and then they need to build the training based off of it. And you kind of have to freeze all the development, because otherwise they're not training to what is going to be there.
They've got a moving target. Yeah.
What a paradox. I hate it.
Oh, yeah. It's always going to be a challenge. It still is today. But, I think the OCM's role, along with whoever's doing the learning and development, is to hold fast and just call out the risks, that if people don't get trained, this is the risk that you're going to have, that you will have so much rework to do, because people will try and revert to old ways of working and find workarounds, because that's their comfort zone. And we need to be able to get them to step outside their comfort zone and find the learning zone, if you like, where they take on the new challenges and etc.
Yeah.
And not stand in the fear zone, because that's the worst place to be.
Exactly. Yes. And know when they're in the fear zone. I like immediately in my brain, I keep thinking about how great leaders can do this in a natural way. And it just happens. And that's part of their personality sometimes. But there's also like, there's the logistical elements of that. Are you actually paying attention to each of those people? Are you actually making sure that all of them are on board? So talk about this framework a little bit. What about it attracted you to it? What's it called? And how can people leverage it?
Well, they can buy the book.
Excellent.
So a couple of years ago, I revised the book because it could apply to any industry. I wrote it for the service management space because that's where I stood at the time. And then a lot of other people were getting interested, so I wrote it for any industry. So it was revised. The revised edition came out a few years ago. And the framework is split into 4 quadrants, if you like, if you think of a circle. And half of the quadrant is taking the organisation on the journey that it's already committed to, if you like. We know that will change, but generally.
Yeah.
And the other half is the innovation, taking the organisation. What can the organisation do into the future? What's possible? And then it's also then split into formal practices and informal practices. And there's 59 different practices in the framework. So you can pick the ones that you need for the particular change. Yep. So in the book, I've provided guidance on, well, which ones do you do? Because you can't do 59. Which ones are the most appropriate for the change you have in front of you? So I describe how to run a workshop with the key stakeholders around the change and the project. Say, okay, who are we? Who do we need to change? How do they need to change? And which of these practices are going to have the biggest impact? And then asking, do we have the resources? You could pick a practice that, do we have the expertise in the organisation? We go, actually, we don't. To do that, can we get it? No. Well, maybe we need to pick something else. And so it's a bit of a, trial and error until you get a set of practices to go forward. So it's doing things a little differently rather than we do let's do, communications the way we've always done it. We'll put an article in the newsletter to tell people what's coming. And it's the newsletter that everyone just goes, delete, because it's so boring. And I say to people, don't use that newsletter, because if you're putting your news, which you want to be exciting and get people's attention, in the boring old newsletter, you're saying this news is boring. And you're burying it in somewhere that no one's ever going to find different ways to communicate, different mediums, do a video maybe, or something that's not usually done prior to launch a new initiative or to talk about a new initiative. To do a blog series or video series, or can you do road shows and make them, excite? I don't know, lots of different ideas. Depends on the organisation, and what people will absorb. So.
Yeah, the things I remember best are when people demonstrate something and it's a total dumpster fire. That's a great way to demonstrate, like, hey, I'm going to fail. We're all going to fail together. And this is how we succeed together, is through trial and error and getting through it together.
Yeah.
That vulnerability is tough for some leaders, though.
Yeah. And I remember a story. I won't name the software. It was service management. And it could be an urban myth, but this is a story I heard. So it is secondhand, that these young employees, if you like, were supposed to be helping with testing. And they were given, I don't know, a tablet or a phone. And the instructor said, right, I'm going to explain to you how to use this application. And one of the employees just went, delete. And what are you doing? If you need to explain to me how to use it, I'm not using it. And I thought, he's so right, isn't he? It's like, I don't have to, if you give me an app, it should be intuitive. So, and then I'll find my way around and get the, maybe eventually look at the help when it gets a bit complex or I need some more guidance. But generally, it should be intuitive. So I just love that story. I think it's so poor instructor, we're just like, oh.
It's perfect though. I spent a year and a half doing experience design, and we built portals for employees.
Well,
and that was the entire point.
Yeah.
Make it so simple that people, there's no way that they would need to be trained on it, because you're following Conway's law. Mimic other tools that other people are using, so that they just know it's just intuitively works where you want it to work. And then you have the cycles and the wherewithal to focus on changing their behaviors, changing their patterns. The real OCM. So what advice would you give to managers or leaders that are trying to drive change in their organizations?
I think this is 101, isn't it? It's listen. Listen. And we've been saying that for decades, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but we really need to hear what's being said. If we don't listen, we don't know how people are reacting. And I think a lot of leaders and managers, unfortunately, today still, like, they could be part of the group that came up with this great idea that we're going to do something. And they've talked about in the room, the virtual room, whatever, they've talked about why we need to do this. They open the door, they come out, they go, okay, we need to do a digital transformation and we're going to employ this technology. So they're talking about what and how, and they've forgotten the why. And if you don't tell me the why, I'm not buying into this. If the why is we need to remain competitive and we need to keep people in jobs, I'm on board. Just telling me we're going to do digital transformation and how we're going to do it, but not the reason why. Well, why would I buy into that? So that's what leaders need to start with, the why, and not forget that. Don't assume that everybody's on the same page and assume that everybody knows what you know. And then listen to what they're saying. Because if you started with why, and so that's the justification, clear justification for the need for the change. And then you encounter resistance. That resistance could be a good thing. And you need to listen to it, because it could be that you're doing the wrong thing. Or it could be that the message you're sending out isn't clear enough. So I wrote an article years ago, resistance to change can be good. It's telling you something. Don't ignore it and just go, oh, they're just being, stick in the muds or whatever, or they're just being stubborn. There's probably a good reason for it, so listen to it and then make the change needed, the adapt or change direction slightly or totally, whatever it might be. But don't.
Damn, that's good.
Yeah.
That's such good advice. I was on a call earlier today, and the leaders that were on the call, they didn't know what direction to go. They knew that there was a general sense that things needed to improve. But even looking at the survey data, there was nothing pointing conclusively like, oh, this is where we need to go. This is clearly what we need to do. And your advice is perfect for that. Start the conversation, especially with your peers, because then you start to, make those relationships and develop those relationships. And then you can get down into the details. They'll start talking to their teams and bubbling up. Here's what everyone thinks about this service or experience or whatever it is.
And the key word you used there, Matt, was conversation. Because, and again, I've written about this not so long ago, is we talk about communication, and I say start to think about that more of a conversation, because a conversation has to be two ways. Communication can be one way. I can communicate at you, and I'm not asking you to come back at me. Where a conversation is inviting you to respond to what I'm saying and checking in that you've actually heard the message as I intended it to, and you have a chance to ask questions and challenge and whatever. So it's definitely a conversation we need with people, even if it's a conversation en masse. Make sure people have the opportunity to come back and find more information. Where do I go for more information? How do I find out more? When's it going to happen? Who's it going to happen to? And all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. All that mass communication stuff has really changed with the pandemic. And speaking of, how do you think that the pandemic or remote work, hybrid work is impacting organizational change and the ability to do it?
Yeah. I mean, it's it's having a massive impact on OCM because it is a massive organizational change that's happening. The sad thing is, and you know I've written a lot about this, and it's something I'm very passionate about, is this, what's the word I'm looking for? Just bloody mindedness, demand for people to go back into the office for no reason at all. Now, how do OCM people work with that? Because there is no why.
There is no why.
Yeah. So, and I say to people at the end of the day, ask yourself the question, was it worth the commute? And if you go, yes, it was, because I caught up with my colleagues and we had a good brainstorm or we did some team building, great. Co-locate physically, whatever. If you at the end of the day say, was it worth the commute? No, I could have done exactly what I did in this building from home and been more productive. Then why? Why did you go? Because it was a Wednesday. Yeah. Really? So, you know, we've got OCM is struggling to... OCM can help when leaders listen to what people want and go, okay, these are the employees' preferences. Will it deliver on our business outcomes? And if there's a match, then let's do it. Let's try it. Let's experiment. Let's have a go. Let's do it with people. Let's collaborate. And stop trying to go back to March 2020 because it's not going to happen. You know, it just isn't going to happen. And if you want to be an employer of choice, you've got to get on board. And there's so many, you know, and I've been talking about a leadership crisis because this is just demonstrating that we do have a leadership crisis. Because if you talk to leaders who are making these demands, you know, you must be in the office on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Why? Because it'll help our culture. What a load of that is.
Bollocks.
Culture isn't built in a building. Culture is shared experiences and values and purpose, you know. And the other reason it could be, you know, we need people in the office. Why? Because we need to justify the real estate that we've invested in. You know, so there's no reason, there's no sound reasoning they can come up with. So it should be teams and individuals that say, when does it make sense for us to go and co-locate physically? I might, as an individual, go, I actually want to go in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because there's too much distraction at home. So it's my choice. And the technology's better than I have in my home office. But it should be a personal and team choice when to do that, not just because it's a particular day of the week. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, massive change. It is a massive change for organisations. And there's a lot of considerations, you know, HR and legal and finance and all this sort of stuff. But that's not a reason not to do it.
Yeah. Start with why and make sure it's a good why.
Yes.
And I love the justify real estate costs. Like, well, make some money, sell the real estate.
Yeah. Cut the
lease. I mean, assuming your portfolio is in good shape.
Yeah. Repurpose it, you know.
And so have you seen people adapting? Have you seen OCM experts adapting to this new hybrid work environment? Like, has your advice to managers changed, or is it really just a delivery mechanism change?
Yeah, I think one of the big shifts, and I've been saying this before the pandemic as well, is that OCM traditionally has been templated to the nth degree. And change is happening too fast. And I did a presentation recently for a large food retailer here. And afterwards, one of the ladies said to me, you know, this whole freeze, unfreeze, refreeze approach to change doesn't work anymore. And I said, well, it never did. And the person that is associated with is Kurt Lewin. He was an American psychoanalyst, whatever he was. And there's research to say he never, ever said it, which means that the premise on which nearly every change management framework is based, which is 3 steps, you know, prepare, plan, do, whatever, is what never existed. He never said it, you know. So it's never been that simple. Change is not that simple. And the researchers in their paper actually said that. You know, this was a very clever guy. He would have never said anything so simple. when you're dealing with people and the complexity that is people. So we don't have any, I use the analogy, the change is like a wave. And it's a massive wave. Some are bigger than others, but it'll knock you over if you stand still, and it'll take you with it, and you'll go under and you'll come up trying to breathe. And while you're trying to get on your feet again, the next wave comes over. So we need to find ways to ride the waves of change, and that's about being prepared for it. And that's how OCM is, I think, has to fundamentally change, that we prepare people for the next change. We won't know what it is. We don't know what the next big disruption is, but I assure you it's around the corner and we won't see it coming. It might not be a pandemic, but it could be a financial crisis. Who knows? But we need to be ready for it. We need to have the conversations with people that change is constant. Just get with the program. We can't, it's not going to go away. This is our reality. So prepare people and get that mindset that, change is an opportunity. Look at it as an opportunity. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. We're going to have to do things differently. But, it could be learning new skills, wherever, your job's going to be more interesting. We're going to get rid of the mundane stuff you're doing. Whatever it might be, see it as an opportunity and we will get over the learning curve and the hump and ready for the next thing that's going to come along, because there will be a next thing and it'll be there faster than you'd like it to be. But hey, that's the world we're living in. So OCM has to get, and I hate to use the word, but OCM has to get agile. It has to move faster and faster. And I use the analogy in one of my other books called Game On. I use the analogy of a soccer team. It could be any team, but you think of a soccer team. Every game they play is different. The location, the pitch, the makeup of the team, the opposition, the tactics, the weather, everything's different. And they don't stand there and go, resist change. They say game on. And they get on it. Right. Even during the game, things change. People get sent off, and tactics change, and positions change, and they get on with it. And that's how we need to get the workforce to go, bring it on. And be in a different position. Yes, I've got a different opposition. Yeah, there's different tactics. But game on. Let's just get on with it and play the game to win, because we need to win. So that's where that's where OCM needs to get the workforce to.
I love it. The wave metaphor is so good. It's always going to be different. Every wave is going to be different. You just need to be used to standing in them. And here's how you get good at fighting waves over and over.
Get on the surfboard.
Yeah, exactly. And it ties back to your earlier point that you want to mix it up. You don't want to approach every change the exact same way, because the next wave will knock you over because you're standing the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then you did mention you've been doing this leadership series recently. What was the onus? What drove that? And I think, was it 5 points? What are the 5 points?
5 points. What were the 5 points?
Of the 5 steps of so
there's a leadership journey. Yeah. So I've been I do a lot of reading. I love, I've got a lot of aggregated tools that I love. And there's a lot of research from different organizations. McKinsey done some, DDI, that we have a leadership crisis. And I think one of them, can't remember now, it's like over 2,500 global leaders surveyed. And I think just under a quarter said they had leadership in their organization that was inspiring and fit for purpose. So that's 75% say they do not have inspiring leadership and it's not fit for purpose. So these are leaders that do not have the right skills for today. And we know leaders need people-centric skills and they don't have them. And you can't expect them to just go, I need to be more people-focused and change overnight, because that isn't going to happen. So let's not just keep bashing them because of it, because they've got a command and control approach to leadership. That's how they were taught. That's what the role models they had. That's what they've adopted. Let's mentor, support, coach, train, develop. Most leaders want to be better leaders. You know, they want to, they know, and then most know they have to change. So I leveraged that leadership journey from another source, where there's the preparing for the departure. So getting ready, accept it's going to be tough, accept that the journey is going to be a long one, and then getting on the voyage and be prepared for the setbacks, but learning from those setbacks and keeping going and having the support crew alongside you to help you on your way and give you feedback when you slip back. And then there's the return, where you embed all of that learning and share that learning with the rest of the organization. So yeah, it's three-stage journey. And then there's lots of things along the way, like setting milestones. Because if you've got, at the end of your journey, which could be, a 12-month learning program, you've got your vision at the end of the day that you're going to be a better leader. It's a long way off. So you need milestones along the way and that feedback from people, so you can look back and see how far you've come, and that keeps you going and gives you momentum to keep going. Because it isn't something, you're not going to go on a training course and come back a better leader. It just doesn't happen. It's a learning process.
Yes. I really like that metaphor. It made a lot of sense to me when I was reading it. I was thinking, this is exactly how you get good at traveling. This is how you get good at leading.
Yeah. I talk about packing the bags for the journey, put a bit of resilience in there and growth mindset, and yeah.
I think about some of the journeys I've taken, and I have really tried to stuff a lot of tools in there just in case.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about be prepared.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Karen, where can people connect with you and learn more?
Okay, well, they can go to KarenFerris.com or LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. I pretty much live in LinkedIn, so I'm there.
Yes, and I can confirm she's a good follow. Make sure you check it out and follow her. Thanks for your time today, Karen. Thanks for being on Ticket Volume.
It's been a pleasure.
And for our audience, did you know that you can join us for a live recording? Register today at ticketvolume.com and click on register. Thank you for listening. You can change and improve this podcast by DMing me or leaving a comment. Start that conversation. It's a conversation. And speaking of Ticket Volume, did you know that this podcast is brought to you by InvGate, a fit-for-purpose service desk solution with integrated asset management designed to let you focus on supporting your organization without huge implementations that take many years and millions of dollars. In fact, IT teams from Toyota, NASA, and McDonald's use InvGate to manage requests, automate workflows, and centralize inventory data so that they can focus on delivering better service. Because good service is good business.